Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Broadview Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Mandalorian a bit and break down some of the lore that is tying into this show. So, stay tuned.
Sometimes I gotta sometimes I gotta
Good morning, everybody. I forgot what episode this is of the Broadview. You know what it is. I'm not going to remember any episodes. It's not important. Of the Broadview Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the Mandalorian, and specifically, we're going to talk about some of the lore that's tied in. Now, shout out to your boy. I am going to die here probably soon. I have COVID. I will come back to life for the next podcast. Though I explained all of this on my 476ers podcast, I will give a brief talking about this at the end of this episode. So all my guys who care about nerd shit are going to get the same fucking, man, what's up with my hair? Are going to get the same exact talking to that I gave all my 76ers people, my basketball people. What I wanted to do on this podcast is talk about the Mandalorian, but specifically talk about it in a way that will give you the background of the lore. If you haven't watched a lot of the Star Wars things, I think most people assume Star Wars is just the movies, right? It's episode 1, 2, and 3, which are the prequels, and explain how Darth Vader comes to be or whatever, describe the wars and the events that lead to Darth Vader. Supposedly, episodes 4, 5, and 6 are regarding Luke Skywalker and, the battle against the Sith in that war, and then episode 7, 8, and 9 then are the continue with Ren and this story over here. Now, the best way that I'm going to explain this to you, and the best way that you need to think about this going forward, is that the Star Wars movies, episodes 1 through 9, are what you would call the Skywalker saga, right? They begin with Anakin Skywalker in episodes 1, 2, and 3. Excuse me. You see that noise you just heard? That's COVID in my body, eating me alive. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 are your Anakin Skywalker saga. Episodes 4, 5, and 6 are the Luke Skywalker saga, and then episodes 7, 8, and 9 are the the continuations of those sagas. So Luke Skywalker's two Padawan, you could say, right? The two people he taught, in Ren and Rey, and then. But also, Leia Skywalker's son, right? So essentially, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the movies. Just want to give you the outline. The rest of Star Wars, so that includes the Mandalorian, that includes Star Wars Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, which are cartoons. And then, there's like a million comic books and stuff like that, and books. I'm not going to get into those stuff because that's just not my expertise. Those build out the rest of the Star Wars universe. All right. There is a universe beyond the saga that is the Skywalker saga. Aside from all of these wars, we know these wars are happening. We know there's we've seen in Star Wars Rogue One, we've seen Rebels, and Star Wars and Solo, the Han Solo saga, and all those stories. We see a lot of the universe get built out, but those movies felt like, while they were good, they're not bad movies per se. People hate the Solo movie. People think that those aren't part of the canon arc, right? They're not part of the main arc. In reality, you would argue that they are more part of the main arc of the grand nature of Star Wars than the Skywalker saga is, because the Skywalker saga is really just about this one family of people, this one lineage of people, and the things that are happening around those people, the thread that connects them. Whereas the rest of the universe I'm going to get into actually paints a way bigger picture of the Force in general, the Force, which is far more complicated and far more complicated than we understand, and then those movies really get into and explain. So with that said, I wanted to give you some of the background, because, and there will be spoilers on this podcast. I'm going to try to save them as much as to the end, specifically spoilers leading up to three episodes ago or so. When I originally tried to do this podcast then, but the audio got bad, and therefore I ended up scrapping it, and I'm doing it now when I'm sick. So I wanted to, so there will be spoilers, but I'm going to try to save the spoilers for the end in case you're not caught up. If you're caught up, then you already know what I'm going to spoil, but you may not know the significance of the things that we're going to talk about and the things you might have heard. You may not even know that what I'm saving as the spoiler at the end here you may not know why it's a spoiler. It just may seem like a throwaway character that you heard somebody say, right? So let's get into it. So first, we're going to start with Clone Wars. Clone Wars was a cartoon that started back in 2008, I want to say, something like that. And it was on and off for a while. Recently finished with season 7. Now, listen, I want to be clear. I'm not a Star Wars expert here. I have friends who are Star Wars experts. I am not a Star Wars expert. But over quarantine, I decided to become a Star Wars nerd, right? And I binged Clone Wars. I binged Star Wars Rebels, which we'll talk about in a second. And I rewatched the first season of Mandalorian to see what I may have missed. And, now we're in season 2. So, and I had watched all the movies before. So Clone Wars is a cartoon. Season 7 had recently released on Disney+. Season 7, to be clear, the last 4 episodes of Season 7 are 4 of the best animated. I watch a ton of anime. This is my nerd podcast, right? I did this on Joker, so I want to be clear. I watch a ton of anime. And the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars are up there with anything I've ever seen in any anime ever. It's as good as anything I've ever seen. Those 4 episodes could be their own standalone movie, and it would be one of the best animated movies I've ever seen. Star Wars Clone Wars, again, follows. Star Wars Clone Wars happens in the events between episodes 2 and 3. So that's between the second prequel with Anakin Skywalker and the third prequel with Anakin Skywalker. The third one being when he turns in, when everything goes south, he finally turns into Darth Vader. Episode 2 is just him as Obi-Wan's Padawan, pretty much, showing some of those things. Clone Wars essentially fills in the details and shows us, one, how Anakin becomes the legend, where people, the legend worthy of people saying this was the best Jedi in history, arguably. The most skilled Jedi in history was Anakin Skywalker. If you watch the movies, you're like, this bitch right here, this Spider-Man 3 looking motherfucker who's always crying and has a face the whole fucking, from episodes 2 to 3, this bitch ass motherfucker right here, this is the best Jedi. You're telling me? I don't fucking believe it. Of course you don't believe it, because it's trash. Hayden Christensen's not even a bad actor. There's the decisions they made about how Hayden Christensen was going to be just didn't work. Clone Wars gives you what you need in reality. That really paints the picture of how this dude, one, how much of a thug he really was, all the thugged out shit he would do, and also, 2, paints how Darth Sidious, a.k.a. Senator what's his name? Chancellor Palpatine, I'm sorry, how Chancellor Palpatine is poisoning him throughout the series, and you're slowly watching as he turns to the dark side. With season 7 season 7 leads up to the final events that happen in episode 3. Meaning, while episode 3 is happening, season 7 of Clone Wars is essentially happening at the same time. And what Clone Wars realized was this character right here, Ahsoka Tano, is actually the best character in Star Wars. In my opinion, Ahsoka Tano is the best Star Wars character of all time. It's not even close, if in reality. And I've spoken to other Star Wars nerds who have confirmed this to be the case. That, yes, no, you're right. If you've watched all of the shit, you realize Ahsoka is the best character in all of Star Wars. And then you may my friend Alex put it a good way. He said, the difference between people who watch the movies and people who have watched all the shows and all the movies, like the real Star Wars nerds versus people who just watch the movies. So the people who watch the movies will say, oh, my favorite character is Darth Maul or Han Solo or whatever. The people who watch all of the surrounding material are going to say, no, it's Ahsoka Tano, hands down. This is the best character in the series. Ahsoka Tano is little known Anakin Skywalker's Padawan, meaning Anakin is the person who's teaching Ahsoka how to be a Jedi. At one point, Ahsoka gets accused of murder, which she did not commit, and she ends up proving her own innocence. However, the Jedi Council ends up kicking her out of the Jedis because they don't believe her. When she proves her own innocence, they welcome her back into the Jedis, but at that point it's too late. And she said, no, fuck you, suck my dick. And that is super important, because there has never been there's no lore of a character walking away from the Jedis, right? There's no such thing as a character saying, nah, I'm out, peace. Y'all didn't believe me, I'm out. You know what I mean? She has a deeper understanding. She has almost a deeper understanding of anyone. And it's important because characters like Qui-Gon Jinn, who in episode 1, is the person who taught Obi-Wan, right? That character is looked at as almost too liberal for the Jedi Council, like a hippie-like character. But that character has a far better understanding of the Force than all of the other characters, arguably, in the show, other than Yoda, arguably, right? Has such a good understanding of the Force because he is not tied, he does not adhere to these principles in such a, in such a conservative way where everything is by the book. He just carries a certain spirit about him that follows the Jedis and therefore has a better understanding. Well, Ahsoka is that to an extent, really. She really is that to an extent. You first meet Ahsoka in the Clone Wars movie. I think she's 16 at that point, I think. And by the end of, I'm not sure how old she is by the end of Clone Wars. I think by the end of Clone Wars, she might be like 18, 20, something like that. And again, just watch, if you watch nothing else from Clone Wars, listen to this podcast and watch the last 4 episodes on Disney Plus. It is the most thugged out shit. You've one of the most thugged out animations, but also you see the events that connect us to Rebels. So Clone Wars ends at the point that Order 66 is given. If you don't know what Order 66 is during the Clone Wars, essentially, to give you a quick backdrop, and I always suck with what side is what side. So the good guys, you could say, the team that they have contacted the Jedis, and the Jedis, and that's where Padme works, and where Chancellor Palpatine is the head of, who they don't know at this point is Darth Sidious, obviously. They have commissioned clones from what the hell is this stupid this world? It's on the tip of my tongue. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to remember. It's the long aliens, the tall aliens. It's not important. It's a little bit important, but I'm just giving you a quick backdrop. From Camino. No, it's not from Camino. They've commissioned clones to be created to fight on behalf of them in these wars. That's what these are. These are clones. These clones specifically are called the Bad Batch, though. So we're not going to talk about the Bad Batch. But they commissioned these clones. Order 66 at the end of episode 3, as Anakin has turned full heel, now is a bad guy, which we'll get into a little bit about why that happens. As that happens, Order 66, and this is like an example of some of the clones right here, actually, the 501st. The 501st is the division that is led by Ahsoka, and even like this right here, this is painted to represent Ahsoka's, like her face, how her face is. It's not painted, that's how her face looks like as an alien, but this is her squad right here when everything goes left. So when Order 66 is given, so if you didn't know, so they created all these clones, and as you find out during the Clone Wars cartoon, especially specifically in the last it might be in season 6 you find this out, they have been embedded with these chips, and no one knows what these chips are actually for. One of these chips in the cartoon goes bad, and one of the clones starts just going crazy, trying to kill the Jedi. Kills one Jedi successfully, and then wants to kill the rest of the Jedis. And they don't know what this is for. But when the clones are commissioned originally, Chancellor Palpatine has it that these chips are embedded. These chips are what allows Order 66. So in the movies, you may not know why the clones just all of a sudden turn. What do they just short circuit? They just follow orders this well that Order 66 is given, and now they're killing Jedi? No, it's because they were embedded with these chips. And this is what I mean when I say that, yeah, these are the movies, but this is why these cartoons are so important, because the cartoon tells us how they've done this. Order 66 is given, the clones feel, they essentially gain a bloodlust to kill Jedi. Ahsoka manages to save one clone. So, actually, I'm sorry, I jumped too far ahead. So, so the ending of the last 2 episodes of season 7 are running up against Anakin is killed now all the kids. No one knows that necessarily, but Ahsoka recognizes that there is a disturbance clearly in the Force. Anakin is going left, essentially. She doesn't have the confirmation of it happening yet, but shit is going left, and Order 66 is given while she's on this ship. Before she's on that ship, now those are the events of the movie, right? That runs up with the events of the movie. Now let me tell you how this ties in with Rebels and with Mandalorians. So we have Ahsoka. She's on this ship. On this ship is Darth Maul. Darth Maul, who is, you may not remember, is this gnarly looking villain right here, who Darth Maul obviously is a thug, but in the cartoon, the voice actor in the cartoon is excellent. And actually, the voice actor makes an appearance in Mandalorian as just a throwaway character, but the voice actor is excellent. The cartoon is what paints the picture of Darth Maul far better. Let me see if there's any real cartoon images here. I mean, you see some of them, but they're really just fan renditions. Yeah, this is from the cartoon. That's from the cartoon. Anyway, we find Darth Maul, and here's the cartoon too. We find Darth Maul in Clone Wars. What happens is another character of his alien race ends up getting found, and how do I explain this? So the Sith have what's called a law of two, which is a master and apprentice, and they have no one else technically. But what's his face? Darth Sidious's apprentice had an apprentice who was getting too powerful. They kill her. They think they kill her off. She actually goes back to her home planet. Now, this is also important because in terms of how the Force works, it kind of builds out this picture. She goes back to her home planet where the woman who is in charge of that planet, her name is Mother Talzin, is very powerful with the Force, but she's a witch. And what they use, they think it's like a magic, as they consider it magic as opposed to the Force, right? They don't know what's called the Force, they call it magic. And that's important to understand because we know the Force as the Force. There's the dark side and the light side, but in reality, the Force is used in all corners and reaches of the galaxy in completely different ways. This woman is a witch. She ends up getting a character called Savage, who is of this race, and who becomes very powerful, finds Darth Maul and brings him back so that they can get revenge on Palpatine and on his apprentice, whose name is it's the guy who plays the wizard in the asshole wizard in fucking Lord of the Rings. I can't remember his name right now. He's a son of a bitch. Anyway, he's in episodes 1, 2, and 3. And it's disrespectful that I'm not remembering his name. Honestly, it's very disrespectful. But they want to exact revenge on him. Darth Maul comes back into the picture. I won't get into too many of the details. He was cut in half, obviously, by Obi-Wan at the end of episode 1. He survives that shit with some machine legs. They've kind of fixed him. He's already a lunatic at this point, though. And so he starts creating mischief. Let's just say that. He ends up going to Mandalore at some point. And in Mandalore, he contracts a group of Mandalorians called the Death Watch. In Mandalore, there are groups of Mandalorians who are warring. There's different families of Mandalorians, essentially, who believe in different things. And one of these sects is called the Death Watch. The Death Watch, let me pull that up right real quick. The Death Watch. So the Death Watch is a group of Mandalorians who are, I'm going to be honest with you, the Mando from the Mandalorian is of this group. He is of this group. They are they adhere to letter of the law of the Mandalorian ways and traditions. And therefore they want to take over Mandalore. Darth Maul contracts with them. At one point, he fights their leader, kills him, and Darth Maul becomes the leader of Mandalore. Okay? There's some crazy shit here. The leader of Mandalore. So what happens is Bo-Katan, which I will show you over here. Boom. That's this character right here, Bo-Katan. She appears in episode 3, I believe, of The Mandalorian. Maybe episode 4, I can't remember. In episode 3 of The Mandalorian. Very important here. This character is the sister of, she's not here, was the sister of the old ruler of Mandalore. That ruler had a little love interest, a little fling with Obi-Wan. Darth Maul kills her in front of Obi-Wan as part of his revenge against Obi-Wan because Obi-Wan chopped his ass in half at one point. And Bo-Katan is left. Bo-Katan was part of Death Watch for a bit. When Darth Maul contracts the Death Watch and takes over Mandalore, Bo-Katan says this isn't right. She leaves the group. Darth Maul, she ends up leaving the group, getting in contact with Ahsoka Tano, who at this point in season 7 of Clone Wars, so come back now, right? We have Clone Wars. Bang. Ahsoka Tano is doing thug shit. over here, the Mandalores have now, the Mandalorians, Mandalore, the world, has been taken over by Darth Maul. Bo-Katan, the sister of the old ruler, is now left, comes in contact with Ahsoka Tano, who is no longer a part of the Jedi Council, right? She's no longer a Jedi. Comes in contact with her, asks for her help. She goes to the Jedi Council. This is the last time in the Clone Wars that we actually see Anakin Skywalker before everything hits the shit hits the fan. Asks them for help. They can't really give her help officially, but they give her the 501st, and that's what this is. Where was the 501st? It's over here. No, it's over here. I'm sorry. Gives her the 501st. That's when they paint their helmets the same color as her. They go to Mandalore to take it back. Ahsoka Tano, in the spirit of doing gangster shit, fights Darth Maul one-on-one, defeats him, and that's crazy because Darth Maul is a thug, to be clear. Darth Maul is mad powerful, okay? Ahsoka Tano was that much of a thug, though. Ahsoka Tano rocks out with 2 lightsabers, defeats him, gets him on this ship to bring back to justice. While they're on the ship, Order 66 is given, all right? And it turns into an all-out free-for-all, all right? Ahsoka ends up manages saving one of the clones, essentially having the chip removed from his brain with the help of some of the droids on the ship. Her and him are in survive. It's a horde mode. It's like zombies on the ship now, and they're just doing everything they can to survive. She ends up freeing Darth Maul to help to go create chaos, essentially, so that they can escape. Darth Maul ends up creating a ton of chaos. He ends up escaping himself. Ahsoka, I mean, it is just thugged out. You got to watch it. It's incredible. It's so artistic. The end of it is artistic. The ship ends up crashing, killing all of the clones, essentially, except for Ahsoka and Rex is his name, the guy he saves. They build a small shrine to the people who've died, essentially, to all of the clones who died, because what you learn through Clone Wars is that the Jedis are commanders in the army, and the clones are all at their service. They all, grow to love each other, essentially. The clones are not just disposable. These are real people. Yeah, they're clones, but they have feelings and emotions. They're real people. And because of that, it's a very complicated situation. She builds a shrine for them, which at the end, we see Darth Vader come across, finds this shrine. He assumes that Ahsoka has died here. It's really artfully done. You should watch it. I'm sorry. It's just beautiful. It's bringing a fucking tear to my eyes. So that leads us to the events of Rebels. So Rebels, where are we at? So Rebels. Rebels, we meet a group of rebels who are, this is now in between the events of episode 3 and episode 4. So before we find Luke Skywalker, at this point, Luke is like 5 years old. He's a little kid at this point. We know he exists, but he's a little kid. And I'll talk a little bit why we know he exists. And this is Darth Vader is out here creating shit. We meet Ezra Bridger, and who is this guy right here with this lightsaber? This is his master. So there's no real Jedis left, but if you said this is his Padawan, and this is his what's his face, which is, what is his, now I'm forgetting his fucking name. He also does some thugged out shit. Man, this is killing me right here. Hold on. It's not important. Anyway, so Rebels picks up and continues building out this world, right? We're continually fleshing out this world. Ahsoka Tano makes an appearance in Rebels. But most importantly, by the last 2 seasons of Rebels, the main villain of the show is a character named Grand Admiral Thrawn. Grand Admiral Thrawn is this blue motherfucker right here. And this guy is a fucking thug right here, to be clear. This character, it has no ability with the Force, all right, no Force abilities. He is somebody who ends up being captured by the Imperial Army at one point, which I think I said wrong. By the bad guys, essentially, right? The guys who are run by Palpatine, essentially. He gets captured by them, and then he essentially infiltrates them and then becomes Grand Admiral of their army, or of the Navy, I think they say. And he is one of the highest ranking members. He's the only person he reports to, essentially, is Darth Sidious. You know what I mean? He's pretty much the only person he reports to. And he's a fucking genius. He is an incredible strategist. He has an understanding of all of his enemies. He takes a great deal of time to understand how his enemies think so that he can defeat them. I mean, he is so empathetic. He is able to almost care about the same things his enemies care about, and that's what makes him as thugged out as he is. So to refresh, we've ended Clone Wars. Ahsoka Tano and Rex, they have now disappeared off the grid. We don't know where they are. Darth Vader, the Scourge of the Galaxy, is running around creating havoc. Grand Admiral Thrawn is at the top of all of this and is causing beef. And there are a group of rebels that want this shit to all change, which is right here. And Ezra Bridger is a character that's all these characters. This is Hera. Sabine is a Mandalorian whose family is in Mandalore during this time. Hera is, I forgot what this race of alien is called. She is a thug. I wish I could remember what his name is. It's killing me that I can't remember his name right now because he is also a fucking thug. He's not like a super thug, but he has some thugged out moments. You know what I mean? He has some thugged out moments, and it's killing me right now. I can remember, it'll probably pop in my head anyway. He turns blind one point because of Darth Maul. He's a son of a bitch. So Rebels. In Rebels, we discover Ezra Bridger is very, very forceful. By the end of Rebels, he is incredibly powerful with the Force. He's not super strong with the lightsaber. I mean, he can hold his own, but he is very powerful with the Force. And in Rebels, at the end of Rebels, he ends up, towards the end of Rebels, he ends up going into, they go into this Jedi temple that the Imperial Army is investigating. They don't know why they're investigating. He goes to this temple. It's an old temple that was there. He had been to this temple. The world, his home world is called Lothal. All of the important events pretty much happen here. There are some events that happen in some other worlds, but a lot of the important events happen here. And what we discover is that we discover three tenets of the Force. There are animals that are Force sensitive. There's a character in this show that pops up who is Force sensitive, but who is neutral, all right? And this character is extremely powerful. I'm going to be clear. He's extremely powerful. Oh, I should mention this about Clone Wars. Clone Wars shows you how Yoda finds out how to turn into a Force ghost, by the way. Okay. They're a character. It's not really important for anything here, but it's just kind of important to know, just in general for the scope of Star Wars. Because that shows you kind of the process of Luke. You know, in episode 8, Luke uses his Force Ghost to cause all that havoc at the end of it, only to die by using it. You know, at such an extent, he's essentially projecting his Force Ghost from one planet to a different planet. It's crazy. Ezra goes into this temple, and there's like almost like a riddle, and there are three characters on this temple. These three characters that are on this temple. And actually, let me pull that up right here because this is somewhat important. Star Wars Rebels Temple on Lothal. Lothal Temple right here. Let's see. We have images. Bang. Worked out exactly how I wanted it to work out. These three characters are introduced in Clone Wars. This guy right here is almost a god level character. Now, I'm sure this will get explained later on somehow. In we don't exactly know. But he is almost like a keeper of the Force. He has his own planet almost created that is Force sensitive, that Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka all visit at one point. This character is the keeper of the dark side of the Force, and this character is the keeper of the light side of the Force. Now, this person is important. All these characters die, essentially. However, in this episode in Clone Wars, they show, during this arc, they show Anakin what he is to become. Essentially, he learns that he's going to become Darth Vader, but they end up kind of wiping his memory, so he forgets it. Because when they show him that, he essentially becomes it. At that moment, they wipe his memory and they say we got to try to change this destiny. This character, the good side of the Force, she ends up reincarnating herself into a bird that follows Ahsoka around. All right. So this right here, what we're seeing here is a temple key of Lothal. Ezra ends up figuring this out. He gets into this temple. and ends up in a world between worlds is what they call it. And this turns super if you watched Doctor Strange. This is very Doctor Strange like. So remember when Doctor Strange does all this shit in Infinity War and counts down all the possibilities? Well, this world almost represents those possibilities, right? Because Ezra is able to see windows in time and is able to affect events in the past through the Force, pretty much. And at one point, Ezra, so in season 2, all right, this is important. In season 2, they go and find this dark temple. This is where Darth Maul comes back into play in Rebels. Darth Maul is still being an asshole. They go to this temple to get what's called a holocron, and these holocrons have like information in them. Now, the holocrons that the light side uses, if you are a Jedi, you're able to unlock it, but there are dark side holocrons too that only Sith can unlock. So they go there, they open up this temple. Ultimately, Darth Maul is pretending like he's a good guy, kind of. Obviously, he's not. He turns sides on them. He wants Ezra to be his apprentice. He kind of becomes crazy about that. He hits Ezra's teacher in the eyes with his lightsaber. Like, essentially, he's blind now. And Darth Vader shows up. Ahsoka is there. Darth Vader and Ahsoka square out. They square up. At the end of this episode, we don't see the ensuing fight. All right. What we know is they fight for a bit. Ahsoka pushes Ezra out using the Force. Ezra ends up fleeing with his dude. It's like right there on the fucking. It's killing me. They end up fleeing this planet, and all we see is, for some reason, we see Darth Vader limp away from this fight. All right. Half of his mask is broken. I mean, they beat him and Ahsoka beat the shit out of each other. This is to show you how powerful Ahsoka is, how strong she is. Her and Darth Vader square up and they beat the shit out of each other. Darth Vader limps away from this fight and Ahsoka limps away from the fight. And Ahsoka ends up going into a cave, and that's the last. And the bird follows her into this cave. We don't exactly know how they get separated in this fight. They fight and they separate. We don't know why. Well, when Ezra goes into this temple, Ahsoka essentially makes him. He ends up opening this window into that fight. Ahsoka makes a move to collapse the temple around Darth Vader. Vader tries to, at that point, goes for a killing blow with the lightsaber. Ezra actually pulls her out of time. Vader misses, and Ahsoka disappears from that fight. She is now in this world between worlds. She has a conversation. Essentially, Ezra saves her life in the past, which is very important in Star Wars. I mean, this is more important because this is canon. This is all part of the canon, right? Saves her life in Star Wars. That means that you are in Star Wars theoretically able to go back in time and do shit like this. Ezra saves her. They end up saying, okay, we got to go our separate ways here. This is a plot point that's used later at the end of the show by Palpatine to try to get Ezra to do some shit for him. Essentially, Palpatine's a son of a bitch. Ahsoka ends up going back to her time period, and that's how they got separated. So that means that in the annals of time, as things, every moment happens and rehappens, right? That's how time works. Time is not just a moment that comes and goes. It's a moment that continues to happen an infinite amount of times over and over again. Every single time, Ezra has pulled Ahsoka out of there. They separate. We jump back to Ezra. Ezra then gets into a final square off against our blue-faced friend over here, who is General. I'm going to close this now. But I'm sorry. Before I go there, it's important to point this out because these are characters that are way more important than pretty much everyone in episodes 1 through 9. In the scope of the universe, these are very important characters. You know what I mean? This is why the cartoons are so important. I'm sorry, let me close this. So now, in a final face-off, Ezra Bridger, again, my man in Rebels, wait, where is it? Right here. So Ezra, right here, homeboy, is about to face off with this blue-faced son of a bitch here. Okay, things are freezing. I'm sorry. Boop, he's about to face off with this blue-faced son of a bitch here. In order to defeat him, he ends up infiltrating their ship. Actually, he gets captured, is what he does. But at two different parts in the show, aside from the time of the temple, Ezra and his master have two different moments where they essentially gain an understanding of the future, of their own futures, that no one else can see. And this is important too, because we know that people get premonitions through the Force. Ahsoka gets them too, but these two get premonitions that are almost, I can see the future type of shit, right? Where Ezra's master essentially ends up dying, and he knows he's going to die, and it's an important situation because Ezra is about to pull him out too when he helps Ahsoka, and Ahsoka says no, because if you pull him out of this situation here, all of you die, because essentially he saves them. You know what I mean? So he ends up, but he knowingly went into his death essentially because he had a different premonition. Ezra has a premonition. He ends up on a ship. To a point where he records a message to everyone saying, if you're listening to this, this was the only option I had. You know, this was how we needed to win this fight. He goes on his ship. At one point, we discovered there are these whales essentially in the universe that are Force. These whales that just go through the universe, giant whales that are Force sensitive, that Ezra is able to communicate with. Ezra is like Aquaman of the motherfucking universe, essentially, through the Force. So there are these whales that we find them, I think, in like season 2 or 3 or something. And these whales, he calls them. They can fly in light speed. They can travel light speed. He calls them. They grab the ship with Ezra and Thrawn, and they fly light speed the fuck out of there. And that's how Rebels essentially ends. That's the last time we see Ezra. That's the last time we see General Thrawn. The assumption is that they're dead, right? But at the end of Rebels, what happens is Ahsoka, our resident thugged out person, pops up and picks up Sabine Wren here. All right. Now, at the end of so let's jump back a second here. There are rebels happening, right? Remember, there are rebels. Ahsoka, we're not exactly sure where she is. They reunite with Rex at one point. Rex is helping the rebels fight this war, but Ahsoka she's just off the grid right now. The last time we see her in Rebels before season 4 is the fight with Darth Vader, and then we don't exactly know what happens. Ezra pops her out of time. We know that Ahsoka has survived. We still don't know where she is, though, in the universe necessarily at this time period. They are in a fight against Grand Admiral Thrawn on Lothal. They're trying to defeat him. It's very difficult because Grand Admiral Thrawn is a fucking thug who respects the shit out of Hera. I assume we're going to meet Hera at some point. I don't know, which I'll get into that in a second. Sabine Wren is the daughter of a family on Mandalore who, I don't know if I need to get into all of this. Sabine Wren ends up working with the Imperials, creating a bunch of weapons for them that she didn't know. She just didn't know. And they ended up using them against the Mandalorians. She ends up leaving them and joining the rebellion. And actually, there are Easter eggs in Rogue One of this cartoon, which is important too. Because it just shows you that this is all canon, right? This is all part of the main story. Sabine Wren is on Mandalore at one point. I'll get into that in a second. So she's on Mandalore. Ahsoka, at the end of Rebels, pops up, picks up Sabine Wren, and they say, let's go find Ezra. All right? That means Ahsoka, probably through the Force, knows Ezra is alive somewhere. Doesn't know where, but knows he's alive. And with that assumption, you can assume at the end of Rebels that if Ezra is alive, so is this blue-faced motherfucker right here, Grand Admiral Thrawn, right? Okay. Now, let's take a step back here and review. Ahsoka Tano, thugged out, Padawan to Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. Between the events of episodes 2 and 3, she leaves the Jedis. She ends up in the midst of Order 66. She ends up surviving. 5 years after the events of episode 3, she pops up meets up with these rebels who have Ezra Bridger, who is essentially a Jedi apprentice, mad powerful with the Force, is essentially able to talk to animals and possibly commune with time. Ezra, in a fight with Grand Admiral Thrawn, he takes him and Grand Admiral Thrawn and kamikazes them deep space. We don't know where the fuck they go. Ahsoka picks up Sabine Wren, and now they go. Now let's step back here. This character, Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan then meets up with these people on Rebels at this point. Bo-Katan, if you don't remember, the sister of the old ruler of Mandalore who was killed by Darth Maul, skips out on Mandalore. They help liberate Mandalore with Ahsoka at the end of Clone Wars. But now the Death Watch has kind of reemerged and taken back Mandalore. Sabine Wren then gets her hands on this what a grand reveal. On this, the Dark Saber. The Dark Saber is a sword that is the sword of the first and only Mandalorian who was also a Jedi. Mandalorians, as we learn, especially in this show, we'll get into in a second, we learn in the show, Mandalorians are they're like the sworn enemy to the Jedis. Pretty much is what they are. They're like Jedi killers. So anytime you need to kill a Jedi, you hit up a Mandalorian. So the very first and only person who had ever been a Mandalorian and a Jedi had this sword called the Darth Saber. Through time, the Darth Saber became a symbol for Mandalorians to unite Mandalore. Why is this important? Well, this is important because as we see, Gus Fring, who is also Moff Gideon in The Mandalorian, right, has this sword at the end of season 1. He has this sword. The last time we see this sword, Bo-Katan has it. Okay? That's the last time we see this sword. Bo-Katan has it at the end of Rebels. It seems like she might be ruling Mandalore. Seems like she takes over Mandalore with the help of Sabine Wren, who is now looking for Ezra. So now, that brings us all the way back to the Mandalore, to the Mandalorian, I'm sorry, right? So in The Mandalorian, 2 episodes ago, we meet Ahsoka Tano, played by, what's her face? Played by, what is her name? I'm sorry, let's look it up. The Mandalorian, Ahsoka Tano. She's right here. I wish I could remember what the actress who's playing. We all know this person. All right, she's been in a million movies, and I just can't remember her name right now. We meet Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian. 2 lightsabers, white lightsabers. Why? Because she is not of the Jedi Order. She's not on the dark side either, so they give her white lightsabers. She is a thug. All right, just doing thugged out shit in The Mandalorian. She pops up, beating the shit out of people. It's fantastic, honestly. It's a great episode. Probably my favorite episode of the show so far. Because Ahsoka Tano was my favorite character in the show, and she does it. They do it right. It's just great. She's in The Mandalorian. At the end of the episode, the villain of that episode, she asks, it's a fantastic fight, by the way, and this character has what's called a Beskar spear. So this brings me to this point real quick. Beskar is the metal that the Mandalorian in this show, right, who we're calling Mando, but he has a real name, and I can't remember his name right now. Mando, remember in season 1, gets this Beskar armor. You know, he gets paid in that metal. They turn it into his armor. But we find out he ends up getting into a fight with Ahsoka when they first meet, that Beskar can resist lightsaber. That's a very important detail right there. Super important detail. 1, because Moff Gideon has a Darth Saber. And in this episode, Mando ends up getting a big-ass Beskar spear, a spear made out of that metal. So setting up a fight, right, where if he fights against the dark saber, he has a metal that can counteract it. At the end of this episode, Ahsoka tells the bad guy, "Where is your master? Where is this blue-faced son of a bitch, Grand Admiral Thrawn?" Now, this is about 20 years or so after the events of Rebels. Okay, so we don't know what happens here. Rebels happens. That is before Episode 4. We actually meet Obi-Wan at one point on the planet where Luke Skywalker is. That Kamino? That's not Kamino either. On the planet where Luke Skywalker is, and we see like Luke actually in the background. It's set up because what happens is Darth Maul pretty much tricks Ezra through the forest to track down Obi-Wan. Ezra ends up tracking him down. Darth Maul infiltrates that meeting and finally dies, it seems. Obi-Wan, in a very samurai-like duel, they square off, and one move, and Obi-Wan kills him. But it's a very touching scene because he's holding Darth Maul. There's almost like a mutual understanding, and what you find out, because Darth Maul, the whole series, is plagued by getting revenge against the Sith. You know, which is kind of why he aligns himself with Ezra at different points. And he knows why Obi-Wan is on the planet. He knows that Obi-Wan is looking at Luke Skywalker. And he actually asks Obi-Wan, is he the one that is going to get revenge on the Sith? And Obi-Wan tells him yes. And Darth Maul dies pretty much peacefully at that point. So anyway, so Luke at this point is like, 5 years old. The events of The Mandalorian are happening in between episodes 6 and 7. Yeah, and so Darth Sidious has died. As far as we know, the armies are gone, right? There are no Imperials. That's why the world is the way it is. We're talking about Imperials in past tense as if they don't exist. Well, because the New Order, right, as we find out in episode 7, 8, and 9, the New Order is being built here. You know what I mean? Is being built through these events. So in between the episodes of 7 and 8 is The Mandalorian, which is about 20 years after that. So Ahsoka Tano and Sabine Wren, we don't know the journey they've gone on. So Ezra Bridger theoretically is out there somewhere, right? This is a very force powerful person, meaning he probably knows who Grogu is. Grogu is the name of Baby Yoda, who we find that out in the episode with Ahsoka. If theoretically the big reveal of where is your master, where is Grand Admiral Thrawn, means Ezra is somewhere out there. And that is very, very important information in the backdrop of Star Wars, because while all of these events are happening that seem like the end of a story, right, in episodes 1 through 9, that seem like the end of a story, there is another character like Yoda out there somewhere during these events, we assume. Luke Skywalker is somewhere in the universe of The Mandalorian, but so is Ezra Bridger somewhere, who is very force positive. Ahsoka, we don't know if Ahsoka ever found him. Sabine Wren is out there. Bo-Katan, we know, has popped into The Mandalorian already, right? So that means Sabine is probably somewhere out there as well. These characters from Rebels are probably out there somewhere. That is what makes this so important. This is why the movies are arguably less important than the TV show. All right? I mean, I'm sorry, are less important than the TV shows and the cartoons, I should say. I'm sorry. Because the movies tell us of the Skywalker saga, the beginning and ending of it. The show is telling us of everything else that's happening in the universe, pretty much. You know what I mean? This is what's happening in the rest of the universe. While these petty fights are happening, there are these force moving things. If you look at the force like a balance of the universe that's being moved around, it being moved around is happening in everything that is not the movies, essentially, other than Darth Sidious being present from episode 1 to episode 9, which I think makes sense. I think a lot of people were mad at that. They felt that was a cop-out after they essentially wasted what's his face, what looked like the Snoke. After they wasted Snoke, whatever. But while that is happening, we know that Grand Admiral Thrawn is out there too. So while this army again is being built up in between episodes 6 and 7, we know that Grand Admiral Thrawn is out there, and we don't know what he's doing. So what's important to understand is that the events that are being set up in The Mandalorian, that are continued off of Rebels, that are continued from Clone Wars, are events that will build around that will essentially encompass episodes 7, 8, and 9. Meaning, we already knew that 7, 8, and 9 was not the end of Star Wars. It was the end of the Skywalker saga. But there are other events that were built around that, meaning Grand Admiral Thrawn could theoretically be the person, like the big bad, you would say, right? This is the person who is the bad guy's bad guy at the end of the day, who either maybe is still working with Darth Sidious and is going to continue Darth Sidious's legacy after the events of episode 9, or who is like, fuck Darth Sidious and is going to do his own thugged out shit. Aside from them, these events that are happening before episode 7 will probably succeed past episode 9. You know what I mean? That is your deep dive right there. Hopefully I wasn't confusing. So to give a quick recap, Ahsoka Tano, thugged out, was the Padawan to Darth Vader, essentially, right? Was Darth Vader's Padawan, essentially. She is out here doing thugged out shit. Ezra Bridger, who was taught by a host of Jedi, he's met Yoda at one point. He's met a lot of people. theoretically may have even met Luke Skywalker. We have no idea. Well, we know he met Obi-Wan. May have met Luke. He's probably about 10 years older than Luke, or maybe 12 years older than Luke. So he's a teenager in Rebels when he sees Luke. So he's probably about 15 years older than Luke. Bo-Katan is someone who probably is looking to reclaim Mandalore, right? She wants to go back to Mandalore, as we discover at the end of her episode this season of The Mandalorians. But she no longer has the Darksaber, meaning she had to have gotten into a fight or something, some beef with Moff Gideon, where Moff Gideon, a.k.a. Gustavo Fring, ends up with the Darksaber at one point. So we don't know the details of that. Listen, there's going to be a bunch of spin-offs here. There's an Ahsoka Tano show coming up. So there's spin-offs about to happen that we don't know. There's going to be an Obi-Wan show come up. The Obi-Wan show, to be clear, looking at the way Star Wars has been doing it, you see like Marvel, the MCU, is building a story from point A to point B to point C to point D in the timeline. Star Wars essentially has gotten into this crazy thing where they give you 3 movies. They don't explain a lot of things. They give you a bunch of plot holes, and then they give you cartoons in between. They give you cartoons at the end that say, well, this happens in between these 2 movies, and this is filling in the plot holes. So the Obi-Wan show theoretically is going to do a lot of that too. It's going to help build out this universe even more somehow. We don't know how yet. We know that there's a Bad Batch cartoon, which the Bad Batch is a group of 5 clones that had some like they had some defects. They were like defective clones, but they were defective in good ways. Like one guy is mad strong, like the Hulk essentially of clones. There's going to be that show. It's going to be a cartoon that's going to continue. So there's going to be a bunch of shows and shit coming up that are going to continue building out this universe, starting with The Mandalorian right now, which is already doing that. It's continuing to flesh it out. It's fleshing out all of these things. I mean, we saw that they had, they said Snoke was a clone in episode 9, right? Well, we find out Snoke is a clone. Well, how do they create this clone of Snoke? Well, Mandalorian is building that out because they want the Baby Yoda, Grogu, who is Force sensitive, to use his blood to create these clones. So that we find out in episode 9, Darth Sidious can inhibit, right? That is what's happening here. That's part of this story. Ahsoka is part of this story. Grand Admiral Thrawn is somewhere part of this story. And that's what the point of this show is. That's what makes these events. That's why Clone Wars, that's why Rebels are so much more important, arguably, than the movies. I mean, I said this at one point. I said, damn, if you watch episodes 1, 2, and 3, you know a fraction of the story of Star Wars, truly. If you watch episodes 1 through 9, you know 40% of the Star Wars story in reality. Clone Wars, Rebels, and Mandalorian are now fleshing out the other 60% of known knowledge, maybe the other 40% of known knowledge, and then 20% are all in the books. You know what I mean? Maybe arguably more than 20% in the books. I don't know, but, I don't read the books, so I don't know. There's comic books, there's books, there's a whole thing, right? This off of what I know, I'm saying 60% of the shows, 40% of the movies is what I'm saying, off of what I know personally. So that's my deep dive. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much. Not a whole lot of jokes. I was just trying to keep everything as organized. I didn't take notes. I just wanted to see if I could jump through this as organized as possible without being confusing or boring. So the point being, that is the spoiler. I'm sorry, I didn't give a spoiler alert before I said it, but that is the spoiler. Grand Admiral Thrawn is the spoiler that happens. That's the big moment that if you know Star Wars nerds, they went fucking crazy because it's like, yo, what the fuck? This Grand Admiral Thrawn is alive. That means theoretically Ezra Bridger is alive. That means in a time where we don't think there are any Jedis out there outside of Luke Skywalker, that isn't true. Somewhere Ezra Bridger is out there. Somewhere Ahsoka Tano is out there, right? During the events of 7, 8, and 9. So, which we don't know. Maybe they aren't, but we'll find out in the coming shows. So yeah, Mandalorian, watch it. I told a friend of mine that Mandalorian at the end of that episode had reached Game of Thrones levels for me. In 2 seasons, and the only way it could have reached Game of Thrones, it's hard to say, right? Because Game of Thrones is 7 seasons long. but it reached Game of Thrones levels because of the events that happened in Clone Wars and the events that happened in Rebels, and now in the events that are happening in The Mandalorian, all of this being connected. It's MCU-like. If you see an Easter egg, you see an Easter egg in The Mandalorian that's tying back to Rebels, or an Easter egg here that's tying back to this movie. There's Easter eggs throughout, just like you would see in MCU, where if you watch, you watch fucking Ant-Man 2, and you find out that the Easter egg of Ant-Man 2, right? So Ant-Man 2, them shrinking into the whatchamacallit, that allows them to go, that essentially allows them to find what's her face, Michelle Pfeiffer, right? That Easter egg is being used as what is going to allow them to recover the Infinity Stones in Endgame, right? So just like that exists, this exists in Star Wars, and this is how it exists. So I wanted to do this as a quick podcast so that if you don't have the time to watch Clone Wars and Rebels, I can give you some of the breakdowns. Look, I gave you as much as I could. And as things come up in The Mandalorian, I'll break them down and how they relate to those shows, because there's a million details that I left out, At the very least, watch the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars, I would say, at the very least, because it's just fucking fire. Like, it's just fire. Like, it's incredible. You get to see how much of a thug Ahsoka Tano really is. So that's it, everyone. Wash your face. I have exhausted myself now. COVID has now, the icy fingers of COVID have gripped what is left of my stamina. I am now exhausted after doing 2 podcasts this morning. I am probably going to faint, even though it's now time to work. So I'm going to go work. And I have to do editing. So please respect COVID. It sucks. It's not fun to have. I'm sure if my symptoms were, like a 6 right now or something like that, I would very much be on my deathbed or in the hospital. It fucking sucks. It's not fun to have. Wear a mask, wash your hands, social distance. Please. I'm not going to make the same jokes I made about getting just get the fucking vaccine. Don't be hard-headed. Or just stay the fuck away from me if you don't. Just go. Just leave. Arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. Black Lives Matter. You know the drill. Everyone, take care.
Sometimes I gotta, and sometimes I gotta cope. And sometimes I gotta, and sometimes I gotta.